Allen, Colin, I mean, the MVP of the league, just a spectacular season was had by the Buffalo Bills quarterback. And yesterday at the Combine, Sean McDermott spoke on his quarterback's MVP journey.
It validates everything that he's been doing for years. It validates his leadership this year, the way he's played on the field this season, the way he's matured off the field, on the field, his decision-making and how that's improved. So all these areas that were perceived, call it gaps, Josh has answered those gaps and he's closed those gaps. And when you do that at the level that he did it at on a consistent basis, the result was the MVP. And so to me, as I said during the year, later in the year in particular, he deserved that.
Very rarely do great quarterbacks get trapped. You know, they create so much freedom. I think it's fascinating. How many years in a row has defensive coach Sean McDermott been unable to stop the Kansas City Chiefs in their last game of the year? And it's amazing. Kansas City could not move the ball against Houston and could not move the ball against Philadelphia. Could not move the ball up and down the field against Sean McDermott's defense. Okay.
Some referee-aided calls, shall we say, in that game.
I mean, I feel like how many more years are we going to run this back?
It's tough. I feel bad, a little bad for Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. They got to get over the hump, but we saw the Chiefs in the Super Bowl look pretty weak. I think Buffalo would have put up a better fight. Would you agree?
The Raiders gave the Chiefs more problems defensively than the Bills did. Am I wrong?
I don't remember many Raiders games. They're too irrelevant, but you could be right. Moving on, let's get...
Ooh, just said the quiet part out loud. Doesn't watch all the games. Okay. I'm actually happy Colin said this because I'm watching this clip and I'm watching, you know, Sean McDermott say, validates everything that he's been doing for years. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. Who cares? What are you doing to get better? What are you doing to finally win? Like, what are you doing? And I'm glad he mentioned the Philadelphia Eagles because obviously we've been talking about the Eagles a lot. They literally just won the Super Bowl. And I think what they did, the Philadelphia Eagles, really highlights what these other teams need to do. And it's more than just, you need to have a quarterback do this and wide receiver do that and an O-line and a run game. I don't even mean that. But the Eagles go to the Super Bowl in 22 and they lose. And then 2023, they take a legitimate step backwards. Whether you want to say it's because of the roster, whether you want to say because of the coaching, it's irrelevant. They take a step backwards. They get blown out in the playoffs. Ugly game. A.J. Brown was injured. Jalen Hurts was injured, et cetera, but still get blown out. They still lose. It was an ugly game. Defense couldn't tackle. And the whole time, this offseason, and especially immediately after the game, it was an absolute, just all of Philadelphia is on fire. What are you doing to fix this problem? The media, the fans were like, we were just in the Super Bowl a year ago. What are we doing? And they demanded answers. They demanded action. They demanded energy. And there was no, well, look over here. Hey, we did go to the Super Bowl in 22. And hey, Jalen Hurts is looking good. And how about A.J. Brown? And there was none of that. There was none of this smoke and mirrors. None. And because of that, what do they go out and do? They're aggressive. They get Saquon Barkley. They get Kellen Moore-Fangio. We already know what they did. They make their team significantly better. And they absolutely dominate the Kansas City Chiefs this time around. Dominate them. And then we have other teams, and you have a coach like this who says, Josh Allen's MVP validates everything. And it's like, that stuff wouldn't fly in Philly. They would be like, oh, that's awesome. If it was Josh Allen in Philly and he won the MVP, but they lost to the Chiefs, they'd be like, yeah, that's great. What are you doing to be better? Why do you think that the Texans or this other team, played better defense against the Chiefs? You're the defensive head coach. What's going on here? What are you doing to fix this? That's awesome. Josh Allen won the MVP. We're really happy. Thank you for that. You had nothing to do with it. What are you doing to win games? you're actually feeling that pressure, feeling that stress, feeling that angst. And quite frankly, it really does drive me crazy. I've talked about this a lot. The Baltimore Ravens, the Bills, and the Bengals. They absolutely drive me crazy. I mean, if none of these quarterbacks end up winning a Super Bowl, which is legitimately possible, there'll be a 30 for 30 on them. How you had potentially 3 truly all-time great quarterbacks and could not win a Super Bowl because of the ineptitude of the franchise. And again, when you see what Philly does and how they were able to win, and again, the fact that they also did it in the NFC Championship game, and the fact that they just, set the league on fire in the playoffs and had one of the most dominant seasons of all time, like, you can see that it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a fluke. It was intentional. It was because of the decisions that were made over the course of a few years, quite frankly. That team was technically years in the making. Josh Allen's going to be in the NFL now for like a decade almost. Like, what are we doing? Sean McDermott should be haunted at night answering questions about, Josh Allen's MVP validates everything that he's been doing for years. Cool, bro, cool. What are you doing to be better? What are you doing? Why do you look significantly better in the regular season against the Kansas City Chiefs than compared to in the playoffs? Why are your teams consistently unable to step up in the biggest moments of the game in the playoffs? Why was your game plan against the Kansas City Chiefs to just give Josh Allen the ball and hope for the best again and again and again? Like an 8-year-old playing Madden. What are you doing? And I'm really yet to see him feel like his back is up against the wall. And I can't wrap my head around it. Having a quarterback like Josh Allen, it's just kind of crazy. It really is. And so I'm happy that Colin just kind of like skipped over this and was kind of like, yeah, whatever, cool. Because like, what are we supposed to say right now in February? Yeah, Josh Allen, he was really deserving in the MVP. It validates everything that he's been doing for years. It's really awesome. He's just a heck of a kid, isn't he? He's a great player, really special talent. Yeah, cool. Okay. And you're supposed to be a defensive mind. You're literally a defensive head coach, which means you're technically supposed to be better than Fangio. Technically. You're supposed to be better than Spags. Technically. Where's your great game plans in the playoffs when they matter most? How is your defense actually about to be one drop 2-point conversion from having the game all tied up against the Ravens? How? Why did it feel like the Kansas City Chiefs were in control of that game the entire time? Why did it feel like the Kansas City Chiefs were never in control against the Philadelphia Eagles? And don't tell me it's because, we play them more. No. The Eagles played them in 22 in the Super Bowl, played them in 23, and then played them in 24 in the Super Bowl. So I don't want to hear it. There's not a single excuse that anyone could give me that could be like, I guess that makes sense. So stuff like this kind of drives me nuts. Because it kind of just feels like every single take from here to the season should just be like just constant pressure, angst, intensity, anger, frustration. What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? How are we fixing this? Is Sean McDermott on the hot seat? Is so-and-so on the hot seat? Whatever it is. Just like it was in Philly. And rightfully so. Even when they made the choices that they made, Kellen Moore, Fangio, etc., it was still hotly contested. Now, there was a lot of media doubters, which I'm not saying was the good thing, but even just the fans, the local media, etc., there was still a lot of intensity of high-level scrutiny of being like, is this the right move? This better be the right move. Bro, if this is not the right move, you're all gone. See ya, bye. And we know even how the regular season unfolded in the beginning. It was like, you're going to be fired by Thanksgiving, Sirianni. There was legitimate pressure. And some fans push back on that. But it's why things get done. It's why someone like Howie Roseman's like, I'm going out and getting Saquon Barkley. Oh, Fangio is available. I'm scooping him up within 24 hours and making him the highest paid defensive coordinator. I'm not going to play any other games. What are we doing here? No, we're going to pay him. We're bringing him in. I don't care what happened in Miami. Who cares what happens in Miami? Nothing has happened in Miami for the last 30 years. Who the heck cares? It's just smart, aggressive, assertive decision making. And if they make the wrong decision, they pivot. They go, oh, no, that was a mistake. Let's go. They don't double or triple down on it. They move on. They make moves. And I'm sorry, when I see any franchise that doesn't do that, I'm just like, what are you doing? And it's funny because sometimes I'll get caught and I'll be thinking about some of these things and I think like, man, if all these teams were run really well and made all these great moves, etc., I'm like, what would the NFL look like? And would that be a good thing? If we could say that like all 32 teams were like technically like, you know, let's say that all 32 teams could technically win the Super Bowl. Like they were all legit Super Bowl contenders. Because Colin keeps thinking this, and I can see where his logic where he thinks quarterbacks are just going to get better and better and better and better and earlier and earlier and earlier on. And if we actually do continue that trajectory, then it's not hard to imagine that one day we would have like 20, 25 quarterbacks who are essentially like top 10 level quarterbacks. And it's just so interesting that if you now have like 20 high quality coaches, you know, et cetera, like what does the NFL look like? Is it really just chaos because everyone's great and it's just like, man, it becomes so wildly unpredictable? Or is it so impossible because there's just not enough high quality people to actually run these teams? Or there'll just never be that many great quarterbacks because, you know, there just won't be. And I don't know. But it's a bummer when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen and you've had the levels of success that the Bills have had for years now, but yet can you say that they're better than they were in 21 to now, 22, now 23? Like can you actually point and say that they are better? Going into this season, do you have the confidence that things are going to be different this year than they were last year? Going into the playoffs, even if they're the number 1 seed and they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs at home in like the divisional round, do you have confidence that something's going to be different? I don't know where that confidence would come from. I don't know where you're going to be able to say with your chest out, this season will be different. You know, J-Mac just said, oh, I think that the Bills would have put up a better fight against the Eagles than the Chiefs did. You know, on one side I can see that. The other side I can be like, I don't know about that. I don't know if Sean McDermott has that team ready to go in the Super Bowl. I have no idea. They weren't ready in the AFC Championship game. Why do I think that they would be ready in the Super Bowl? I don't know about that. I'm not so sure. So, yeah, I don't know. Frustrating, honestly. I feel the frustration, and it's so interesting. This will be my last point. That when other teams lost, every time the team lost in the playoffs, you have the numbers crash for that team, the views, right? They disappear, and I don't blame them. You know, I really don't blame them. I'm very much kind of like, before I was making this channel, you know, after the season's over, whatever, like I kind of also just like drift away for a little bit, take a break, and all of that. But you know, occasionally, you know, you'll see certain segments of fans, and you'll see certain teams that when they lose, they'll either make excuses either for their own team or why they lost or whatever it is. And you have other teams that will just be like, they'll be blasting their team. And, I saw the Bills make more excuses for why they lost rather than holding their own team accountable. I saw the Chiefs, a lot of Chiefs fans make excuses for why they lost rather than holding their own team accountable. And again, in 23, when the Philadelphia Eagles lost, I saw that fan base united in ripping their own team and being furious how things unfolded. And we're like, what the heck are you doing? This is ridiculous. And they didn't disappear. They got louder and angrier, and we're like, what is this? What is this? I saw the Baltimore Ravens fan base make excuses rather than demand better. And it's a weird one. Seeing the Cowboys make excuses. It's like I see all these franchises just make the excuses rather than hold their own team accountable. And again, this is not, I know there's going to be plenty of examples of other fans that do that as well. So this is not a catch-all. I'm not saying 100% of each team or whatever, 100% of the Eagles or whatever. I'm not trying to act like the Eagles are this perfect franchise, because they obviously are not. They obviously have their problems. They were a disaster in 23. I mean, that was objectively and subjectively a disaster. And who knows what they're going to look like in 25 going into 26. There's absolutely positively no guarantee of anything. But I just always encourage fan bases to hold their team accountable and don't get lost by all of the smoke and mirrors and misdirections. Don't let them treat you like you're a toddler. I mean, talking about the MVP and the validation of Josh Allen, I don't even care what question was asked him. I don't even want to hear people like, oh, well, he was asked a question. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Who cares? It's nonsense. It's absurd. Do your job. Be better. You have Josh Allen as your quarterback. Get to a freaking Super Bowl. And the Kansas City Chiefs are not the reason why you're not getting there. They're not. And if they are, then why aren't you run better? Why aren't you making better decisions than them? Why is their defensive coordinator better at building defenses than your defensive head coach? Why? Why is their GM better at making moves and decisions than you? So again, that's what I'm saying. No matter how you slice it, there's no excuse. The answer is just be better. And I fail to see what they do to finally answer that call. And it's frustrating. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Buffalo Bills? Do you think they do enough to kind of, improve their team? I mean, how much longer do you want to kind of just keep being on the same cycle year after year? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.